All right, we're back.
Oh, I thought that all right meant yes.
My husband asked the question before you pushed record. Anyway, a question was specifically asked to me. How did you find yourself? That's a very good question, one that I didn't really think about, but as I started talking to my husband about it, from a young age, I felt like it...
No, first of all, do you even know what it means, finding yourself? What it means to say finding yourself?
No, I didn't really know what that meant.
Do you know now?
Yes, I do.
Oh,
Understanding
okay.
who you are and how... your purpose in life, basically. Why you're here.
I don't know if it goes that far, but that would help. I would think that would help, you know.
Right.
I think there are a lot of
just
people
learning
that
more
don't know.
about who you really truly are.
That, exactly.
And how you fit into this whole scheme of life here on this planet. Isn't
I guess
my
you add the
understanding.
part about how you fit in.
Mm-hmm.
I think by the time you get there, that's
You understand
fantastic,
that?
right? But I don't know if finding yourself. I feel that somebody can find themselves before they get to that point.
Well, I think for me, I always wondered who I was, because that's something from
Well,
when
that's
I
the
was
key.
young that people would ask, you have to know yourself. Well, how do I know myself? How do I really know myself? I mean, I would have people tell me, well, you're like this and you're like that. And then you take those tests in school, especially when I started taking psychology courses, you have those psychology tests, you know, to determine what type of personality you are. I'm like, really? That's really me? But I still didn't feel like I knew who I was. I mean, that doesn't really explain who I am. I mean, all the religious practices that I did and the way I behaved, that really still, I had no idea who I was until I started questioning my faith. And then I met Mr. O, a good friend of ours, and he started teaching me the teachings, a different level of understanding about life. And that helped, but over the past few years, it helped even more to learn more about past lives for me. Not just my personal past lives, just past lives in general, as well as...
I mean, the concept.
The concept of past lives, yes. And understanding that I am a soul. And my soul has had many experiences. And because of those experiences, I am balancing things in this life. So now I feel like I really know who I am. From all of this studying that I've done, it started with this, just asking questions. And as I ask questions sincerely, I always ask God, whenever I pray, you know, before I start on the more intense spiritual journey here, I would just, as soon as I go into prayer, I would ask my questions and I would wait for answers. And the teacher would always appear. I'll say it that way. Does that help? You're looking at me.
I didn't ask you the question, so okay, that helps. I hope it helps. Well, you talked about you wondered who you were. Mm-hmm. So what do you mean by that? As in, you wondered who you were. As in, you didn't know. You were young, but what was so confusing about yourself? Why you said you didn't know who you were?
Because for a specific training, I'll call it, that I went to when I was like maybe 20 years old.
Okay, let's rewind a little bit, because people might not know this about you, but you were a very religious person. Well, you still
Yes.
are. Not were, you still are.
Yes.
Just in a different way now.
Right. I'm more spiritual than I am religious now.
There you go. There's a big difference, right?
Yes.
So you were a very religious person.
Yes.
What was your routine like?
Oh, first thing in the morning when I would get up, I would pray. I'd say a whole set of morning prayers. On my drive to work, I'd say a whole nother set of prayers. On my way home from work, I would normally say a rosary, whether it be one 5-decade rosary or a 15-decade rosary, whatever worked, I would do that. In the evening, right before going to sleep, I'd say prayers again. I said a 12 years, every single day for 12 years, I said this novena, because I was promised to go to heaven and save 3 individuals with me that would also go to heaven with me. So I said a lot of prayers. felt like I was always praying, you know, and during the day at my job or at school, I would have little, what we call them chaplets, like little mini bead rosaries that I would say to different saints asking for help.
All right. So 12 years, you didn't know.
Going to Mass every Sunday, every holy day of obligation, many times during the week. Yes, I was always involved in church stuff. Yes.
And the way you dressed was also...
Always very modest. Had a point where for about 2 years all I did was wear what I would consider nun clothing. You know what a nun would wear, long skirts, long sleeve shirts, just always super modest.
Just for 2 years?
Yes, wearing dresses nonstop for about 2 years.
When I met you, you wore dresses.
Oh no, I mean religiously every day. I never wore pants at all.
Oh.
When I met you, I would wear dresses and skirts, but it was a business suit. Or next day I might have pants on. But during my high school years, oh no, I was going to be a nun. I had to be ready for it, so I wore dresses every single day. I got made fun of for it, but I didn't care.
So that sounds like serious dedication to me.
Might be dedication,
But
I didn't really know who I was.
So then, why were you doing that?
Because that's what was taught to me. This is how you should live your life. This is how you should do things.
Okay. And with all the praying that you did, you didn't feel you got the help?
Well, I knew I was getting help, but I didn't know who I was. I didn't know what made me different from other people, or I really didn't, I don't know how to explain it. I didn't know myself.
Okay.
You know, and even, I was about to say, you know, when I went to this training, and the person, it was a very personal training, it was only 10 of us, they said, well, from everything you're describing your mother, you're describing your father, you're describing your uncle, you're describing your grandmother, from all these experiences you've shared with us. But who are you? I was like, what do you believe? So I had no answers. I didn't know.
Oh, so like when you were doing the novena and all that, it was because you were just following
I was
instructions.
following instructions.
Which is good in a way. Follow hunches and
Yes,
follow.
teacher says do this, I
Right.
did it.
All
That's
right,
how I
so
live my life.
Now, we fast forward. So how were you feeling at that point? After you came to the realization that, okay, I couldn't really answer that question about
Felt
who.
lost, very lost, and I
Okay.
started questioning everything. Why am I here? What is the point? According to what I've been taught, and the way I used to swear because I get so frustrated and mad, you know, will I be going straight down to you know where?
Were you swearing when you were doing the novena?
Yes.
What kind of a thing is
I
that?
had confessional. Just go see the priest at the confessional on Sunday. Father, forgive me. It's been 1 week, and I said about 100 curse words this week. Well, go say your 10 Hail Marys, and you're forgiven.
You're done, right?
But that's really what it was
The
like.
magic of Jesus. I'll just curse and I'm
Right. I mean, well, because
Not too
everybody
bad.
did it. All the Catholics I knew swore.
Right.
You know.
Because that's not a
I just-
serious sin.
It's not. It's a venial sin. It can be
Exactly.
easily forgiven.
Because the sins are categorized.
Right.
Right. You're absolutely right. I remember that. I didn't curse. But I did worse than I got into fights. I mean, I did some things I shouldn't have done. And then I just go and do my confession as well. And they give me like 30. Not 10.
Right.
I get a whole bunch. Then I do like half and then leave. He's in there doing it. He doesn't know how
Well,
to
you know,
do it.
it's funny. I don't remember it was who told us this, but they would get their. Oh, I think it was my uncle Dennis. He was so funny. My mom's brother, and he said he would get his confession. It might be 10 Our Fathers. Just say 10 Our Fathers. So he'd get out of the confessional, go kneel down. Make the sign of the cross. God, Father told me to say 10 Our Fathers. So 10 Our Fathers. Amen. Like, what? Uncle Dennis. You're so
That's
funny.
better than mine.
I know.
I thought I was good.
This is what Father said to say, so I said it. Oh my gosh.
Yeah. So okay,
All
so
right.
now
I hope you enjoyed the stories.
so now you realize that there's something lacking here. There's something
Yes.
missing, right?
Yes.
So how are you feeling now, knowing that, okay, there's something missing, I've done all this for all these years? Didn't you feel strange, all of a sudden questioning your faith?
I did. I did, especially because I also started massage therapy school.
Okay.
And that's where I really ran into a lot of different belief systems and people telling me different things. And some of them, like very accurate personal information, like, how do you know that? Well, I just have a gift. Oh, so it scared me a lot. Like, who am I? What is all of this? Mm-hmm. And then shortly after that, I met Mr. O. And he started to teach me some of the very minimal stuff about the teachings, but the little bit that he was able to teach me.
And by the way, just for folks that don't know, Mr. O was one of my very, very good friends. Mm-hmm. But him and my wife became good friends before
we met.
Right, before we met. It was actually those two that were hanging out.
We were working together.
But he would tell me about her because he was working with her, but that's all I would know. He'd say, oh, she's a good person, and that's about it. So go ahead.
No, but because of him, he gave me some decrees to say. And just from the decrees, the words in them, I was like, well, this is very interesting. And of course, before I would say the decrees, I would pray, oh God, beloved, Mother Mary, Jesus, Saint Joseph, whoever's listening, if this is wrong, if this is demonic, if this is not what I'm supposed to be doing, let me know right now.
Yeah, give me a sign.
Exactly. Because I used to get signs very, very quickly. I used to get but I never did. And I would be able to go through all the decrees without interruption. And I would be like, But every time I would say them and I would read those words and I tried to understand, because some of them were just so foreign to me.
Right.
But I kept doing it. And then when I started working with you, you gave me this book to read, and you said
you gave you a book?
You gave me a book to read, The Magic
Why
Presence,
did I give you a
think
book?
It was. You said I was supposed to read it.
Just like that?
Well, yes, we were in the office and we were looking at the color of the team shirt, and you said, oh, it's in this picture, and it was in that book. I said, well, what's this book? And then you held it and you looked at me and said, read the book.
Okay.
So I read the book. It explained a little bit more. I was like, oh, so I became even more open.
That's when I had the purple team shirt.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Awesome. Okay.
Yep. But then, so I just continued with decreeing and asking questions. And then you really started to open up.
I did.
Yes. Well, this one's coming through with a message for you. This is a message for you. I'm like, oh, yes. After that in the office there, after I read the book, oh, yes. Even because we had gotten an office space, and one morning I got in there and I opened up the office and I was there by myself. But I tell you, I was not. I saw people in the hallways, in the offices, and as soon as my husband got into the office, I said, you've got to see this. Can you tell me what's going on? And he stopped. He said, you know what? I know what to do about this. These are souls that need to move on. And he said, I can do something about this. And he did. I was like, man, that was interesting.
Wow, I don't remember any of that.
Yes, so all these things started to happen. It still didn't let me know who I was, but I was feeling more confident as a person that, I have a higher self. I have direct connection that I can use. And that helped me. It really helped me a lot.
Okay, so then we continue.
Fast forward many years now, and I read a book.
And my assumption is that, right, that office you're talking about, we weren't dating or anything at that point.
No.
Right, no, right. Not that I
yet.
remember. Okay. So now we go, fast forward.
Fast forward several years, and we were given a book called A Journey of Souls. I was just like, oh, this is nice, and I just put it on the bookshelf. Well, a few years later, I saw the book. I thought, what is this book about? Maybe I should read this book. And I started to read it. I was like, oh, this is quite fascinating. It was more about helping me understand what past lives are all about and how learning about them in some situations can help you. And I was like, oh, this is quite fascinating. And then I started to get more messages. And shortly after I started reading the book, I got one. My husband was doing some practice work, I'll call it, on Akashic record reading, and I had asked the question, and part of the message that came through was that whoever the Ascended Master was that was speaking was saying that they wish they could, that I could see how I look to them and to my husband, something to that effect, and how brilliantly beautiful and golden my light is, something to that effect, like that. I don't remember the exact wording. And I was like, wow, so I really am a soul. I've lived before. I've had these experiences. I started to feel like now I know who I am more than before. And then dreams started happening more frequently, more experiences with my husband, and I was like, okay, I got it. I think I know who I am now. Pretty sure I know who I am. So it was a journey. It was a process for me. But I think it took so long for me. We're talking like over 15, 20 years because of my belief system that I was raised with. I had to, as I'll call it, break through some barriers as to what my mind was already set upon.
Well, it couldn't be 15 years because we've been married longer than that, so it has to be at least a long
I
time.
know.
It's
Well,
been a while.
right,
Okay.
but
No,
the
just
most
wondering.
intense part, right?
Right. Oh, I see.
The most
Got
intense
it.
part
Got it,
was
got
that.
it, got it.
Right. Oh no, it's well over 20 years.
All right. So anyway, so you're saying that then you have a better understanding of who you are.
Mm-hmm.
To answer that question then about how do you find yourself, how would you, after everything that you've shared with us, how would you answer that question?
Ask questions. That's what I did. I just started asking lots and lots of questions. And it wasn't to people, it was always to God. And then I was making sure I was open to whatever that answer might be. And the answers always came from different sources.
And then that's the key, right? Being open to what might be divulged to you.
Yes.
Now, you were raised Catholic.
Mm-hmm.
You, when I met you, as a matter of fact, we had a nickname for you.
Yes.
You remember that nickname?
Sister Agnes.
Sister Agnes, because you were going to be a nun. The way
Yes.
you behaved was like a nun.
Well, that was my whole point. By the time I turned a certain age, if I wasn't married, I was going to the convent.
And anyway, so here we are. This is what you see, and all of a sudden you go on this other journey, learn all these other things, right?
Mm-hmm.
But you're still Catholic.
Yes.
So why are you still Catholic, despite learning all these other things and living a life that's in some ways almost in contradiction to Catholicism? It's not in contradiction, but in some cases it would seem that way for someone that doesn't understand what it is that you've adopted.
Well, I see everything that I've adopted as an extension to the belief system that I grew up with. It's more so the morals and values that I was raised, the discipline that came with it. Those are the things that I still cherish, and I'm sharing them with our children, you know, because they're very important. And I believe everybody should have some kind of starting point. And that was my starting point. So I'll call it my roots at this point in time. And you never leave your roots. And you should never, in my opinion, you should never deny your roots. You should just say, you know, that was my beginning. And I have become even more. It's like a tree that has to have roots and start somewhere. And that's where I started. And I still feel that a lot of that information is very beneficial and helpful.
The practices.
Mm-hmm. Yes, some of the traditions, they're good to have.
The core values, as we talk about, we've been told by Mother Mary.
Right.
But that doesn't mean that, and this is just my opinion, that the Catholic Church knows everything about spirituality.
Correct, yes. Mm-hmm.
And that's where we go and we find out the other things about spirituality, things that weren't answered. You know, and we search for those answers.
Right, the questions that cannot be answered by the church, well, we go outside to find those answers.
But then how do we know that the answers that we're getting are even accurate?
Oh, well, well, because we already did a video on that, knowing the credibility of the source, and I know that I usually get my answers through the Ascended Masters, and whether it comes through dreams or direct message through my husband, I get the answer, usually that way. Or it could come from someone else, you know, who all of a sudden just starts talking to me, and the answer just flows out. And I'll look at my husband, and my husband will say, ah, yes, that's why we were supposed to talk to that person. That's the answer to the question.
We've had that happen so many times. Like all of a sudden we'll say, let's stop here. We have no idea why we're going to stop it. It's not even a place we normally stop in, right? And then we get in there, all of a sudden we see this person, and they start talking to us like, okay, that's why we're supposed to come in here. We just got the answer to this.
Yes, someone we don't even know, stranger. It's like, wow.
And all of a sudden they just blurt this stuff out, and like, we were wondering about this, and bang, there it is.
And a lot of the times they'll say, you know, I didn't even know you, but it was great to meet you, and it was great conversation. And we're like, yeah, that was. You have no idea.
Yeah, exactly. I don't know how much it helped us. So now you said earlier that before you were religious and now you're spiritual.
Yes.
What's the difference between the two, in your opinion?
In my opinion, when you're religious, for me, it was following what I call the pomp and circumstance of the faith. It's following all the traditions, going to the Mass, going to the confession, saying all the different prayers, chaplets, rosaries, novenas. It's following all of those traditions that are put forth from the church, whatever church it might be. And for me, it was, you know, you go to the Latin Mass, so I had to learn Latin, and you follow all these other things, especially with, you know, the Mass, going to Mass all the time. So for me, that was being religious, because I really did not have a full understanding. Even when I read the Gospel on Sunday, which is right from the Bible, even the Epistle right from the Bible, every part of the Mass was basically from the Bible. I'm like, I really had no idea what they were talking about. Even though the priest's sermon was supposed to be discussing it, I still like, what? How does this apply to me? So to me, religious is, you're doing all those things, but you may not, for me, I didn't really see how it applied to me. I didn't see how, you know, now, spiritual wise, what full benefit I was getting from it, because I didn't understand it. But now that I'm more of a spiritual journey and I'm understanding things differently, when I go to church and they read the epistle, the gospel, I'm like, oh, I understand this now based on what I've learned from the teachings and from other faiths and how it all fits together. Makes sense now. So being religious, it's understood differently, and I don't follow all of those traditions anymore.
Why is that?
I choose not to.
Okay. Just a personal preference.
Personal preference. I don't believe they're necessary.
Now, you know, that's blasphemy in the Catholic Church.
I know. Yes, I understand that.
Okay. But again, I understand that because I'm the same way. I remember when your dad were alive, and every time you would come to the house, he'd go to the sanctuary. We always had a sanctuary in our house.
In our house, yep.
And he would go right up to the sanctuary, and that thing was on the second floor. He would always go up there.
Yep.
He would look at Kuan Yin, the statue of Kuan Yin. Ken, why is this thing still here? We'd always have a discussion.
Because my husband was raised Buddhist as well. He's not just Catholic.
My dad is Chinese, Dad, you know? It's
yes.
Like, do you really have to have it here?
You know that's Buddhism. Yes, we know, Dad. But the funny part is, once my dad passed on, he came through, he's like, I understand now. I got it now, basically, is what he was saying. I'm so sorry I gave you a hard time. Oh, fun times.
Yeah, but the thing is, though, he would tease me about it.
Yes.
You know, but I knew that as much as it bothered him, I appreciated that he was open about it, but not in a negative way.
Right.
You know, I really
he had a level of respect for it.
Yeah, that's correct. That's correct. You know, and I bring that up because it's an illustration of how you could have a different viewpoint than somebody else, but it's fine as long as you respect their viewpoint.
Right.
You won't see eye to eye with everybody.
Exactly. We're all at different levels in life.
That's correct. That doesn't mean that you're wrong or that person is wrong or you're right and the person is wrong. It's not about right or wrong. It's about respecting each other's perspective. And that's key. And he proved that. He showed that. I could see the displeasure in him in the beginning, but towards the end, it was more like he had just resigned to the fact he's going to leave that thing there. I'm just going to see if it's still there, and it was still there. So that was the end of it, But we should live our lives that way, where we know that there are differences of opinion, there are differences of perspective. Just respect it, and we do that, we get along a whole lot better. Everybody will get along better.
Yes.
So how do you find yourself? I'd say one of the things is you learn to respect other people's opinion, other people's perspective. Because the moment you stop forcing your perspective on other people, you know who you are. Does that make sense?
Oh, absolutely. Because I used to force my opinion on others, especially in high school, those 2 years that I wore skirts all the time. Oh, I would preach to the kids, you're going down to where because you smoke pot and you curse and you guys are out there having sex. I mean, I would judge pretty much everyone around me. And of course I was unpopular and they voted me.
I was going to say.
That's one of the reasons why I believe they voted me most likely to become a nun, So I did that. And when I started questioning everything, it was a very humbling experience because I didn't have to. I chose to put myself in a position where I stopped judging people. I still did to a certain extent, and I still, I'm not going to follow that. I don't agree with that. But I didn't put anybody down for it. And I didn't tell them, well, you're doing the wrong thing.
Right.
It was, let me hear what you have to say. I went to a Bible study. Of course, I brought my Catholic Bible, which didn't match up with anything they had in their Bibles because it was a bit different, the layout.
You told me about that.
And they're like, what kind of Bible do you have? Like, well, this is actually verse this and this for me. What is it in yours? They're like, why is yours so different? I said, well, do you have this verse? Oh, no. Why does your Bible have that? Mine doesn't have that. Well, yeah, my Bible has a lot more pages than yours does. I don't know why. But I didn't put them down for that. They didn't put me down. There was a mutual respect.
The other thing is like, my Bible is better than your Bible.
Yes, and they're like, we're going to get you a Bible. Okay.
A real Bible.
Yes.
When yours is the real one.
I know. Okay, I was not going to argue.
Just for you individuals out there watching, there are different versions of the Bible.
Yes.
And the ones that are the most accurate are the ones that are translated less. That's really how it goes. And I don't recall what the original version of the first Bible was. I guess it would be different based on the pieces that they found.
Right, and where it was sent to be translated.
Right, okay.
So
we're using the Douay-Rheims Bible?
I was using Douay-Rheims, which is in France. That's where it was originally translated, that Bible. So
Douay-Rheims, it's not very popular here, but it's supposed to be extremely accurate. Mm-hmm. Another thing that we used to use, and I still have the book here from my uncle, Brother Thomas, and when he were alive, he used Josephus, the book of
Josephus.
Josephus. Mm-hmm. And he explained to us about this individual. So if any of you ever want to learn more about the Bible, see, these are some of the things that they never taught us in the Catholic Church. They don't talk about the book of Josephus.
They don't, no.
But he had that as someone in the Catholic Church. Mm-hmm. And he explained to us why he had that. That if you want to verify anything, that's the person that did a lot of... They use his writings to verify things in the Bible. Mm-hmm. He's a historian. So we have that book that he gave us a copy. Mm-hmm. And plus other books that he left for us before he passed on. So I could use those as references. And that's why we have the belief system that we do, because we see the different parts of the Catholic Church. Mm-hmm. The one that they show you in the church, but then we also see the back end between my friend Father Lazarus and my uncle Brother Thomas. We saw how different it was, the knowledge that they had that they didn't make public,
right?
And then what they made public from the pulpit. Mm-hmm. And the different priests that we were friends with. The ones that were the seminarians, so we met a lot of them.
Oh, yes.
And then the retirees that had been to all these different countries, they would explain to us experiences they had and how they saw the Bible now, what the Bible really was like compared to what they teach.
Now, keep in mind, even though I went to Bible study class, I only went to like maybe 3 of them, and it was only certain passages we studied. I still have never read the Bible, but we have fun talking about it.
But they liked my wife because she knew the Latin stuff. My own uncle called me a heathen.
Yes.
Because I didn't know the Latin stuff. Well, where I grew up, they didn't have Latin masses. They had Spanish masses. He forgot about that. He abandoned me and called me a heathen and fell in love with my wife. He's like, oh, you come anytime. We can talk Latin.
And that's one of those traditions that Ash Wednesday, where you go to the Catholic Church and I know other religions do it too, and you get blessed with ashes because you were born from ashes, and to ashes you will return. And Brother Tom would be waiting at the house for us, and as we walk in, he'd bless each of the children, he'd bless me, and then as soon as he got to Ken, you heathen! It was awesome. And then we'd have dinner, all happy, laughing, and jolly. Oh, it was wonderful. But anyway, but how does this relate to the topic again?
The different perspective.
Oh yes, different perspective.
Just like, for example, with the Ash Wednesday, he knew that we had to go and drive so far to pick up the kids from school. And,
right.
We left early in the morning.
Yes.
So we couldn't even make it to Mass in the morning. By the time we get back in the evening, it's late. You have to cook dinner. So he would come all the way to the house and wait for us to get home.
It was a 2 hours traveling time for him.
Exactly.
But he wanted to make sure that we continued with what we were supposed to do.
Exactly. And so this is how different things were for us. And sitting down with the old priests, especially they told those stories that before we were even born, these guys were like in their 90s or something,
90s,
right?
a couple over 100.
70s, right? And they're telling their story like, that really happened.
Some of those priests, they had stories.
Like, we didn't even exist at the time when they were around. But we learned a lot about the Bible firsthand from these individuals. So when people come...
A lot about spirituality, not even
it
just...
It was spirituality,
It was spirituality. It really wasn't just about religion. The Catholic faith or Catholic religion. It was spirituality in general. And they would share from all the different religions that they run into when they did their missionary work across the globe.
Right, like India, China.
Yes.
Exactly, you're absolutely right. It was spirituality.
It was fascinating, quite fascinating.
And so that's why we find it interesting when people have this idea that, oh, how could you believe that? That's totally against the Catholic Church. We find it fascinating because the things that we have been exposed to came from Catholic priests. And not just Catholic priests, these guys were like cardinals and archbishops, right?
Yes.
And now they're retired. And they're the ones telling us these things about Mother Kuan Yin, about Confucius, and about Buddha and
Krishna.
Muhammad and Krishna, right? And these are priests
Catholic priests
that held high positions
telling us about
Church.
other religions
Exactly.
and how they all fit together and
Right.
incorporate each other.
So this is why we encourage everybody to ask questions, and the Ascended Masters encourage us to do the same thing, that they know that the way you're going to grow, where you don't question your faith like my wife did early in her life, you don't question your faith because you're not following it by faith. You have tested it, you have asked questions, your questions are answered. So nobody can shake your faith. You don't wonder if you're on the right path. You don't wonder why somebody does or doesn't do something. You know why you're doing what you do, because you understand your spirituality. You understand spirituality.
You know who you are at that
Exactly.
point.
That's the difference. You'll never... I don't recall, maybe you can tell me, but I don't recall ever questioning my spirituality.
No, you haven't.
Exactly, right? Why? Because I have proof, right? I have living proof, because the Ascended Masters teach us to implement.
Right.
I don't just read a Bible and then try to go by, oh, well, in here it says this. I prove to myself whether or not that actually is accurate.
And that's my husband. If he reads something, he implements it right away because he wants to see for himself. Does it really work?
Well, you've gotten the same way. That's why now you
I have.
find yourself. So to find yourself, that's the key. You implement. It's not about reading books.
No,
It's not about going to church and spending hours there.
it's doing what you're learning.
Doing, exactly. It's applying what you're learning so you can see the results. Okay, why does it turn out this way? And then you see. And then your questions get answered. And then your faith, as they call it in the church, your faith increases. Because, and it's infallible now, right? You know that.
Right.
It's for sure, this is what it is. Anybody come and tell you, that's not what it is, really? You've lost your mind because you know better.
Right.
You know, when you started out, you didn't know better because you never got in a situation where you were questioned about what you were doing before.
That's right.
So somebody comes and questions me about what I'm doing, I can sit down and have a conversation with them for months if they want to hear it. And when we're done, they won't convince me that what I'm doing is wrong because I know it's not.
Right.
How can you help people with what we do? You know, how can you do the things that we've done with other individuals if what we're doing is wrong? Right? If we're in cahoots with the dark forces, why would they want to heal people and make them happy? Why would they want to help people improve their lives? That's not what they do. You know? So that's proof already. And that's why it's easy for you now to say, I understand who I am, because you see it.
Yes, indeed.
So you go on a spiritual journey, you'll find yourself. If you go on a physical journey, it's hard for you to find yourself.
Yes.
But if you're trying to figure out, should I be a doctor? Should I be a lawyer? Should I be... That's where the challenge is. People think that that's who they are. You're confusing your career with who you are. That's not who you are. Who you are is that physical being, you know? Connect with your physical self, with your spiritual self, and you'll get to understand who you really are.
So who you are is that spiritual being.
Spiritual, not physical.
Not
right?
physical being.
Not physical, thank you. Right? Who you are is a spiritual being, and that takes a spiritual journey, not a physical journey. And so you go on that path, you'll arrive. But it's a journey.
Okay. Please feel free to share this video. Remember to like, subscribe to the channel, and you will find us at 190vision.com. Look up 190vision on YouTube, Facebook, and Instagram as well.